Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome. This is our second official office hours. Today's topic is going to be on sets in CollectiveAccess and in Connecticut collections. And we're going to go over some things about that. Please feel free to ask questions as you go. Either put your camera on or, kind of raise your hand or whatever. You can put it in the chat, but I probably may not see it just because I've got a big screen with all the other stuff up. So just feel free to jump in and ask questions. We'll also have a chance at the end to ask questions, and it doesn't, at that point, doesn't necessarily need to be sets related. It can be whatever else, just kind of open question time. So let's see, I'm going to have two different examples for you today. We're going to use our Sandbox, which is our kind of play around database, which has a lot of data in it, but it's all kind of faux data. It's copied from Fairfield Museum. It has not been cleaned up or anything. So you'll see like some of the raw data that first went in there, but it's still like perfect for examples like this. And as needed, I'm going to hop over to Fairfield's system, because that's many years post cleanup and been in use. So I may have something that I want to show you that's over there. So the first part is basically what are sets? Why should I use them? What are they? They are basically, it's deliberately grouping items together. Not just for formal collections, it's not going to be like it can be, but it's not the formal like John Brown collection kind of thing. It can be, but it can be used for many other different things. It's more for practical or administrative purposes. It's super flexible. Basically, it just allows you to group any kind of object records together however you want them. Why would you want to use this? It's endless applications of what you might want to do, whether it's exhibit prep, working on a cataloging project, working on a workflow for research, projects like a deaccessioning project or a moving project, digitization projects, kind of anything. Depends what your workflow is going to be. So let me jump into them and show you. So I'm basically just going to do a generic search. This is in the Sandbox. I'm going to do a generic search to like pull up everything initially. So putting the asterisk in the upper right quick search box here. I have to move us over out of my way. Here we go. So I'm just going to go into, for those of you who may not have seen it yet, anytime you do a quick search like this, it's going to show all the different results and all the different modules. Objects automatically opens up in full. And anytime you see the number 100, it means you have more than 100 results. So we're just going to close that for 1 second. There's also more than 100 entities in here. Occurrences is actually exhibitions. One of these days we'll get that name changed so it makes more sense. But there's 3 occurrences in here. There's archival collections in here and other faux collections. Storage locations, there's loans, there's a lot of records in here to play with. So we're going to go over to full results for objects. And here's a little bit of everything. We have boxes, we have names, we have storage locations. I'm going to change the display so we can see different information. And using the sets and display options, we can really make this a good workable, into a good workable workflow. We're going to change this to from display current locations to, let me go with location with images and see what that looks like. Just as I look looking at images, if there are any. I don't know if there's that many in ours. No, it's kind of boring. Kind of where we were, but that's fine. But this is actually a good place to start for some of the sets. So I need to guess totally. I'm blocking all the stuff I need to get to. So if you're in like the object grouping results, you can look over here on the left-hand side and you'll see set tools over here. This is one of the places that you can create a set. Say, for instance, we are doing an exhibition on lighting devices and hanging lamps and things like that. So I am going to click on this set tools. And there's options to add checked items to a set, create a set, and the create a set is either from results or from checked. And the checked are these little tiny check boxes along the edge. So just for kicks, I am going to do create a set. So you can just type in whatever you want to call it. Otherwise, by default, it'll call it what you searched for, like you saw the little asterisk in there. So you can name it here, and I'm going to keep it as from results, and I'm going to hit create. And it'll come up and say create set, created lighting devices, and there's, I missed how many objects are in there, but we can look it up. So one of the things that you want to make sure to do first, it's a benefit of the sets setup, but it's something that you want to pay attention to, is you need to make sure other people can see it. Otherwise, if you're the one creating it, you're the only one that's going to be able to see it. So you can manage that. It's very handy for stuff like planning for an exhibition. So our little exhibition team at Fairfield, we would create a set and have only like the 3 of us be able to see it. And once it was more of a confirmed thing, then we could share it with other people on staff, like education and people like that, so they could see what we were working with. Okay, so the way to control that and create who can see something and to see other options for sets is to go up to the top to manage, and you want to go down to my sets. And once you hover over that, you're going to get a little kick out of all sets, public presentations, user sets, and you can sort sets by user. I just go into all sets and find the one that I just created. Public presentations, we will have that up and going with our update to the public portal, which will allow you to publish sets of items to the public portal as like a little gallery, a little exhibition or something like that. I had been saying it's not turned on yet, but one of our new groups from last year like went in and put stuff in, and it's showing up very nicely on the public portal. But I tried it with Fairfield and it didn't work. So I would hold off until you can plan for it, but I would hold off until we get the new website up and going sometime this year. So hold on, get into my sets, all sets. So you can see some of the ones that have been created in the sandbox. We've done a bunch. Here's my lighting devices partway down. So right now it's collective access. It is not accessible to the public, which is fine. That's what we want. If it was accessible, that's when it shows up on the portal, or is supposed to show up on the portal. It will not in the sandbox, so you could play with that if you wanted to. So lighting devices, we want to go in and kind of look at what that set looks like. So we want to edit it. So click on the little piece of paper. So now you're going to see, you're in, anytime you're in the system and you're not sure where you are as you're starting to learn it, look over on the left-hand side and you can see you're viewing a user set. Like, oh, okay, that's right, I'm in sets. This is where I am. It'll tell you who the owner is, which is, the general login for the sandbox. And there's a basic info page, the items list, and then as with anything in the system, there's a log. So you can see who moved when, who moved what, when, and that kind of thing. So if we clicked on basic info, it just gives you whatever title you gave it, set code, record status, introduction. I haven't had much need to use those fields, but what it does have is user access down at the bottom. I am going to hop over to Fairfield for a second because we have ours a little bit more set up. So Fairfield, we're now on that page. I'm going to go to manage my sets again, all sets. So looking at, just pick one at random. This is from an old exhibit. So we did something related to Brooklawn down near Fairfield. So we're going to go in here. Oh, I meant to say there's this little thing with the magic wand and the number next to it will tell you how many objects are in the set. And we'll talk about the magic wand in a minute. So we're going to go to edit. So here's your list of things that are in there. We're going to go to basic info. And now when we go to the bottom, so I've got a list of user access and group access. So this had been for a previous exhibit. So our old exhibitions team is on there. I can add people as I go. So now say I wanted to put our educator in there. So you can search by their name. And it will, the little gear will turn. I don't know why what's not in there. Okay, let me put my new curatorial assistant in. And it should be showing up. Okay, so here's our curatorial assistant. So I can click on him and you can limit it by somebody can only read it or who can edit it. So if you were going to share it with like an educator and just wanted them to be able to see it, or like your PR person or something, you can just keep it as can read only. If I was sharing it with Alec, I'm going to say he can edit it because I want him to do work on it. The other option is you can do it for a period of time and it'll put it up on the calendar, say you only want the programming department to have access to this till the end of the month or something like that. You can do that there. So I'm going to say that Alec can edit this and then save. So now he's on the list down at the bottom. Group access, this is very handy. This is kind of a side note, but you can create groups in your access level, and I'll just look at it really quickly. So if you go to manage and access control here, this is where you see all of your full access users, user logins, user groups, and access roles. We want to look at user groups. So what I've done at Fairfield is I've put all Fairfield in a group. So I don't have to go in and enter like the whole entire staff one by one by one by one. I have just created a group where I've got most of the staff. Actually, I haven't looked at this in a little while. Okay, so we've got people back and forth. And there's actually like a little bug with this right now. I have to remember to ask Seth at Whirligig about it so you can pull people in and out of there. But that might be controlled by their access individual record. But you can say what level they have and add people here from their logins. So don't want to save that. So I've also created just a cataloger group, a whole project group. So I have members just related to one project, so I can just put them in there for that. So I can't really do anything, so I should be able to just back up through the browser and get to where I was. Nope, it doesn't like it. That's one bad thing. Oh, it does go back eventually. Don't always use the back button to get back to where you were, because if you changed anything in stuff that you're working on, the browser isn't going to find that page, like that exact page, so it'll come up with an error. So group access here, if I wanted to add, so if I just type Fairfield here, it'll say like all Fairfield. So I want to say, and you can also block people out from things. I don't really find the need to do that. So I want to say all Fairfield can read. So I can save that. And now that's our access for that, that set. So if I go back to the list and go find Brooklawn down at the bottom, it'll have me listed as the owner and I can go back and edit if I want it to, and it'll show up for other people. So that's very important. We didn't find that out in Fairfield until we've been using this for a while, because we're sitting there going, no, I created that set so we can look at it for the exhibition. Like, I don't see that set. What do you mean you don't see that set? So it's in there. It's also in the manual, that kind of information. So hopping over really quick, let me just, so here's a copy of the manual. It is available on, ooh, I think I just stopped the share, sorry. There we go. I need the little share screen to go up or make mine smaller. There we go. So over on the CLHO homepage, if you need any reference to things, just go to the CLHO homepage, go to programs, Connecticut collection, or just Connecticut collections page, which I'm already on, and scroll down. And the manual is listed here under the resources, training, and instructions. There's also a couple just information sheets and some video training too. So it's in the manual and kind of walks you through it and gives you visuals and graphics and things so you can see where you're looking at things. Okay, so let me hop back over to the sandbox again. So we're in our user set for the lighting devices. This is the basic info. I don't need to give anybody user access because this is the only login for this system. So back under the items, you can see the list of items that show up. So I don't know why some of these are showing up. Oh, because I put from all the results. So if you're going through and say you are working on this for an exhibit, and you're just looking down the list of saying, okay, I want to get rid of some of these things. I don't want them in here. Just by a list view, you can kind of do an initial kind of weeding out of things. There's a couple ways to add items and to remove items from a set. So at first, when you start getting used to it, it's a little confusing. But after a while, when you get used to it, it depends on the workflow that you're using, which way you go about doing that. So just looking at this list, we're focusing on lighting devices. Obviously, we don't need a man's doublet in here. So if we just hit the X, this is removing it from the set. And that's all you're doing is removing it from the set. We don't need a pull-in water bottle. Some of these other hang lamps. Okay, we're going to look at this later. I don't need a bottle of goose grease. These are items, like real items in Fairfield's collection. I have seen the bottle of goose grease. It's kind of weird. We don't need a brick. We're going through some of these other ones. So we'll take a look at, others of these as we go. So as with anything else in the system, click save. Otherwise, it'll yell at you and say you've made changes and you haven't saved it. So we have those items saved to our list now. So say we're going back into an exhibitions meeting, something else, we want to get back to this set and look at it in like individual records. So we can do find, go to objects, and I usually just click on the objects and it'll get me to the find object page without having to necessarily go through basic browse, that kind of thing. So now you see on the left-hand side, search by set. So if you do the little drop down from here, you can see a bunch of the sets that have been created. So go down to lighting devices, click on that, click the little right arrow, and now you've got your display of all of the records for lighting devices in theory. So here's another test record. So you go in and you go, oh, you know what? We decided we don't want to use these gloves. So this is doing it on an individual record basis, which is fine. It's kind of back to the workflow question. If you're making changes in like 50 items, you want to kind of do it from that manage my sets side if you can. Otherwise, if you're just doing it by individual record, you can click on the edit object and it goes into the object record. So here's our main object record page with all of the basic information, physical characteristics, pages, things like that. So for this one, if you go down to admin info, and this is all in the manual, so you don't necessarily have to remember all this right now. If you go into admin info, it shows what sets are related to this object. So this is kind of going around the other way, looking at it from the object side versus looking at it from the set side. So you can say, you know what, oh, we don't want this in lighting devices. We don't know how this got in here and we're taking this out. So you can just click on the lighting devices under related sets. And again, save. And now if we, I think, oh yeah, so on your history button at the top, so you'll see new, find, manage, import history. Sometimes if you're just going fresh into the system and you haven't done anything in it in a few days, that history thing won't show up until you've gone in and done some work on things. So after you've gone in and seen things, we've been in a couple object records and it'll list them there. And we've had lighting devices set. So you can click on that and it'll go back to that set of objects. And go into the manage my sets part of it. And I'm just going to cheat back up. See if I can back up. Yeah, see, that's where it gets weird. You kind of have to go back to where you were versus if you've made any changes, hitting the back in the browser. So we're going to find objects, lighting devices. Okay, and it's put us back in lighting devices in the set. So we have currently 743 objects in there because we basically just said select everything. So we can weed that out as we go. So if you wanted to add objects in, actually probably everything's in, so it may not work well. Let me get into another set in here. I'm going to randomly go to flower exhibit possible items and click that. So that only has 2 objects, so that's awesome. So we've got that in our set now for looking at it for, exhibit or whatever. So now if we're going to do another search, say we decided for some reason we want to do lighting devices in this set. So if you're searching, actually, I think candle's a good search. Why you'd want to do this, I don't know. But I just know those items are in there. So we've got several items that relate to candlesticks. So I'm going to go to full results again. So, oh, you know what? Candelabras. We want to put candelabras in this exhibit. So you can go back to set tools again and add check to set. We want to add checked items to the flower exhibition possible items set. And we just want these 2 pair of candelabras. So I'm going to check those off. And you can check or click on the little add right there. You can also toggle the check like on and off. So it'll uncheck everything or check everything depending on how you go. So you can say, oh, I want everything but the candelabras. So you can kind of switch it over without having to go and check all those little tiny boxes. So I just want to add those 2, click add. And now we've got added 2 objects to the flower exhibit possibilities. So if I go back to the search by set, also it won't let you add things multiple times. So it'll come up and say, you have this and you want to add 10 more items, and it comes up and says, oh, 2 of those items are already in this set. It'll just say added 8 items, 2 already are in there. So now you can go back to the set and you see those other items are there. Okay, so a couple practical things. Let me go back to manage my sets to see what you can do there. Because one of the benefits too is you can batch edit things using sets, which is, I will give you the warning first. Be very careful when you batch edit. Always be very careful when you batch edit, and make sure that you are double or triple checking yourself, because once you add something, it's hard to change it back. So you want to make sure you're doing what you want to do with it. So we're going to stay in the sandbox, and we're going to keep this little weird set for an example, because it's just a small grouping. And like I said, we can do anything that we want in the sandbox, and it won't really make a huge bunch of difference. Let's see. So I'm going to go back to manage my sets. We're just going to go to all sets for ease of use because I know that there's not too many in here. So flower exhibit possible. So we're going to go into the edit portion of this and see what's possible for us to do. So there's a couple different things. So when you see this, it'll say duplicate this user set. Don't use that. Only because it doesn't just like duplicate the set to do other things with it, because I thought that's what it did the first time I tried it. It actually duplicates the individual records as well. So I haven't found a use for that at this point. I would have a use for duplicating the set. I don't have a use for duplicating all the records. Actually, since we're in the sandbox, I can do that, and it doesn't really matter because there's only 4 items. So if I duplicate this user set, it'll come up and say duplicated this, flower exhibit possible. So if we go back to the all sets list, so here it'll add duplicate to it, which is fine. And you go into it and it should, oh, okay. It's making a liar out of me. Because usually it'll come up and say that this item's duplicated. Because if I can just duplicate a set, that would be great. Let me investigate that. I wonder if there's a different setting in this, or it may have changed since the update that we had a few months ago. So until I tell you, don't use the duplicate part. If it works out, that would be great. Okay. So the other thing you can do is the batch edit, and that's what that little magic wand is for. So if you click on the batch edit, it gives you a list of all of the fields that are in the system. So it'll give you an entire list of where you can batch edit items. There's also a little thing right here that says more options. When you click on that, there's very bright red, very important stuff. It'll say delete all records in set, or you can change the set type for records in the set. That is a little bomb, which means it'll blow it up and it'll actually delete records from a certain thing. So we had a bunch of records that we had duplicated by accident or were entered as duplicates, and I sorted them into a set, made sure they were the right ones, and then I deleted them. It was only because it was an error in, it was either error in migration or an error that we had made. I don't delete records of like deaccessioned items and things like that, because I just mark them as deaccessioned. I always want to track what happened to them, be able to look them up later. So this little exploding bomb is very important to pay attention to. Set type is actually a little bit easier if you're getting in a migrated system or something and everything was migrated in as a document, but they're not documents, they're actually physical objects. You can pull those things together in a set, and then you can change the set type for everything all at once. Let me close options for this. So for batch edit, so say for these things, and this breaks down exactly the way it is in the cataloging page. So the way that I've been tracking exhibitions is putting it in the notes field. Because right now there's not a specific field to say what exhibition it's been included in. So I'm going to say in notes on the basic information page, there's a in batch either do not use, add to each item, replace values, remove all values. So you can kind of tweak it as you go. So for instance, if you put the wrong note in something, you can just say, oh, wait, I meant to say replace all value or add to each item. So I'm going to add to each item. Clearfield flowers and how they're viewed. Because we have to have colons and long titles for things. This makes absolutely no sense, but that's fine. So we're going to save that and just, you can add other things. So when you execute batch edit, it'll come up and say, it'll actually kind of warn you and say, you're about to apply changes to 4 objects. These changes cannot be undone. So that's kind of a good reminder to make sure you're double checking yourself. So you're not like, oh, shoot, I'm in the set that has 5,000 objects in it, not the set that has those 4 little objects I want to change. This is the one I want to change. So you can execute batch edit. This will take 2 seconds, process successfully. So now if I go into these individual records and scroll down to notes, it'll say, this is in this exhibit and it's added to everything, which is really handy if you're adding like bulk information like this. Okay, so I want to go back to our sets again. And I might as well keep going with that duplicate thing. So say we wanted to batch edit again in notes, replace values. And it'll change for objects again, rather than, I'm not going to type out the whole. Just do a couple, like a different one. So now I want to execute batch edit. We change the title or whatever. So now we go back in here. And it just changed it to that. So with that one, because you can add notes as you go, this part will only, like this specific example will only work if you've got like 1 entry for the notes under something. Like if you've got 4 individual notes fields under a record, it may end up replacing all of them with something. So you want to be a little bit careful with that. But if you have a bunch of things that don't have any notes or a field that's exactly the same, you can do that. Just be careful about as you're doing, especially with that warning comes up and says you're making changes to 5,000 records. Actually, I do want to do entities, like add to each related entity. Say you realize this whole group was actually donated by I don't know if I have anybody with Charles in here. And Joanne, yes, I see. Let me grab you in a second. So this whole group was, we found out was donated by Charles K. Davis. So we can add him and put donated by and save, and he'll get added to everything. So that's really handy as well. Okay. Joanne, what's your question?
Yeah, I see that little thing that says send an email.
Mm-hmm.
Are we supposed to check that when we make a batch edit?
No, it's up to you.
Okay, so that just goes to you?
It'll go where whoever's set up in your system. So usually it'll set up, there's a way in the manage access users to who to send it to. This is the test system, so it has it set up to info@CollectiveAccess. So that's actually like Seth at Whirligig. So you can set it up in your system. Like if you have 10 volunteers and you have them working in a project, you can have it set up to, have it set up that this volunteer did this batch edit and sent it to like you if you're directing the project or something like that. I've never used it. I mean, I've not got that many batch projects going on with different people. So I've not had a chance or not had a reason to use it. I think I've tested it a couple of times and it works out fine, but.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So we did batch edit, did that. The batch blowing things up, which is a little scary, so always be careful. Let's see, I was gonna look that up, workflow. Let me hop over to Fairfield for a second. So if we go into Fairfield set, or Fairfield sets, my sets, all sets. Oh, one thing that's kind of useful. So if you're, actually, I'm going to go back to the sandbox for a second. So say you've got the set, you've decided that we're going to use these items for an exhibition. So I've gone, and this is kind of going off in a side thing, but it's very useful of how to like get everything together. So I'm going to do a new exhibition. We're back in the sandbox. Flowers and lighting. And you'll notice, just as a side note, this is one of the new things on the upgrade. Until when you create new things, it won't let you do anything with them on this left-hand side until you save it. So you have to like finish creating. You don't have to fill in all the fields, but you have to create the thing before you can add anything to it. So we're going to hit save. So this is our new exhibition, and you've got relationships, admin info, all that. So we're going to look at relationships. And this is where you'd see related objects, entities, loans, things like that. So this is where we can use batch edit too. So you've gone through all your process, you've found the 50 objects that you want to put in an exhibit. It's in a set, you've been working with them, you're all set to move forward with it. So we can go to the manage my sets and go back to our flower exhibition, go and use our magic wand just from here. So down here under relationships, this is where you can say, and this is where that occurrences is exhibitions, and I really need to remember to change that so it's not too confusing. So we want to add to each that this is where the interrelationship of this works out really well. So I've created that exhibit, so I can't like put things in with the wrong exhibit name. I just start typing and it'll come up with a choice. So it's not going into the Mabel Osgood Right show, but it's going into flowers and lighting. And you can change exhibited in. I've added derivative used in if we've got photos or images being reproduced. So we want to say these are exhibited in, execute batch edit. Are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. And we've got these things. So now if I go back to this and go to relationships, it'll show up that this is in this exhibit. And if we go back and click on this exhibit, it shows 4 related objects being here. So it's a good quick way of adding groups of things. I mean, probably my favorite thing for using sets is to do exhibitions prep and go from there. And you can move stuff around and add and review and that kind of stuff. Let's see. And then the other thing I was just going to jump to Fairfield for is the manage my sets. If we just go sets by user, oh, I didn't search, but we can see, like, it'll sort it by the user. I have like a bunch of different sets in here, and it's very much, you'll see a bunch of mine with just groups of numbers, because these are groups of objects that I need to do some editing on. As collections manager, I need to like say these are all in different places. Oh, moving things, that was the other thing. That's a really good use for the batch edit. So you can move things in groups for this. So if we go to our, back to our sets. So we want to do the batch edit. And we can go to location. All right, related storage locations, update location. We're going to do related storage locations. Add to each thing. I'm going to put that we've, oh, I don't know which locations I have in here. I'm going to pretend to do it in Fairfield, but I'm just not going to execute it. Oh, actually, let me not do that one because that's not a good set for that. Because that's a set for lots, not for individual objects. Flags, that'll work. So go to location. We're moving all of our flags to the library for some reason. So it'll come up FMHC library. It'll add that, say they're temporarily there, do your batch edit. That moves all your flags to the library for whatever reason. So if you have all of your items that you're prepping for an exhibit, or if you decide that suddenly you're going to move groups of items somewhere by a set, you can move them all at the same time rather than having to go individually and do it. And again, that's a be careful when doing batch editing. Okay, so before I do anything wrong in Fairfield, changes may not be saved. Perfect. Why don't you leave that and go back to the sandbox. So let me just double check my notes that I mentioned everything I wanted to mention. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to raise a hand or speak up. I think that was all the highlights of things. So there's lots of good uses for sets, just depends on your workflow, what you're working on, things like that. Anybody have any questions? Or with sets or with anything else that you've come across? Yeah, Joanne.
I mute myself. I'm almost afraid to ask this question. We've been working on just kind of cleaning up our objects. And what we've been doing is things are originally put in these archival boxes. There might have been 20 different things, booklets, books, various things. And we decided that we really needed to break them out into more defined, give them each an object number. So I've been using that little thing. I thought it was the copy, but when you're managing objects, so I've been, and it comes up duplicate when it goes to the new thing. And I've been erasing the duplicate because I've been changing the information there. And it gives me it adds a number, like if it's dot 256, it'll add a -1 and then a -2, -3. Is that fine?
If that works for you, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I actually have done that a few times, like if I'm adding like a batch of objects, that there's like 10 objects, but I want all the information to be the same, like the donor and all that kind of stuff. I'll use the duplicate, and I haven't had need to add like the -1, -2, -3, but for something like you're talking about, if that works and that's going to like be its new number, yeah, that would totally work. That's actually a really clever way of going about it.
Okay. All right. I just want to be sure I wasn't doing anything wrong.
No, if that's, yeah, no, that should be fine.
Okay.
I think
Thank you.
I still have some things in there. Yeah. So this is looking at Fairfields. Oh, that's probably, it says duplicate in the. Okay, because I've got a couple things down here that are like you're talking about. I don't know why that's duplicated. Now I have to look later. But yeah, so
yeah, the other thing it's doing the things that have been duplicated, I've erased the duplicate. When I look at the location, it has a location at the very top of locations. It has the original name of the original object.
Oh, oh, like up here, the location hierarchy part.
Yeah.
In theory, it should change that. Or you may have to change it here. See, I don't use that as much, like that location hierarchy thing.
Okay.
Oh, you know, I don't want to change this without looking and seeing what's going on, because this is Fairfield, so that's like a real change. That's an interesting question. Let me look into that for you.
Okay, Thank you.
Because I think if you change it in like the title, it should change, but I don't want to assume.
Okay. Yeah, because I don't, when I look at the object in the basic form, it doesn't show the location. Let's say the location's attic. It doesn't show attic. It'll just show that, it'll say it's the one about the hierarchy, the one you just showed me. So.
Look at that. Oh, like it won't say location up here on the top
Right, it
left?
would say it up there.
Oh, like when you're here. Oh, okay, I see what you mean. Oh, yeah. So let me get back to location in this. So I would make sure that it's changed here in the related storage locations. So if you're adding it to like attic here, select that and save it here, and it should show up in the top left. That location hierarchy thing is kind of, it's a weird thing. It's very much like a, I'm trying to think of a good example of what it can be used for. Like it's this location in hierarchy, that location is not a physical location. It's, oh, I can't think of a good example that I have in Fairfield. I know I have one or two. But you want to be changing it. Like I kind of ignore this field, this location hierarchy field. I normally just like crunch it down because it's not really something that I use. It's down here, the related storage locations that you want to be moving stuff and changing it, if that makes sense.
Okay, so as long as the location is in bold, that when I click save, it'll save it to that as opposed to the ones in green below.
From
It'll
like
save
up
it to
here.
attic. No, when in the next box down.
Oh, like down here.
Yeah, well, see, there's attic in the second column.
Yeah.
And then you saved it, and then it has other things below that. But as long as it's in the black, it'll save it to that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Always. Locations is tricky. It's straightforward, sort of, but you have to do it a few times to make sure you're in the right place for the right thing. Let me go back to Sandbox so I can. So I can actually do things and not mess anything up. No, I don't want to go to sets. I just want to go to an object. Yeah, so if I'm here and I'm in location, which is a bad example because the sandbox is screwy for some reason. Let me go to Fairfield and I'll just undo this later. So if I click attic here, yes, it's in bold. And it'll say that it's chosen down here. It's temporary. So if I click save, now it should show up on your upper left as current location there.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. If you didn't see, I think I did locations last week. If you didn't see the office hours from last week, go to the office hours and do the location video, and it'll be posted. And that might help straighten things out
Okay,
a little
thank you.
bit. Yeah. Locations is like honestly the easiest thing to be weird about. And I think I said it in the session, and it sounds kind of stupid because it doesn't make a difference a lot of the time. But when you're moving things around in location and you're selecting things, I'm just going to put odd in here. And say you're selecting something that's farther out, like when you click on it really firmly. It doesn't actually do anything, but it almost like confirms it in your head that I'm like, oh, I'm changing this to the Garrett. Okay. It's more so when you're actually in locations, moving the locations around, but it's silly. It's just one of my own little like quirks for doing that. So now if I save it, it'll change it to the Garrett. And then there's a whole section or a whole part where we talk about home locations, which is a new part of the locations thing that we just got updated this past year. So, oh, Beth, hi. I didn't see your hand up.
No worries. Basic question, and I'm sorry I was 10 minutes late, so maybe you answered it. Can you and conceptually step back and tell me what the difference between the use of sets and like lots is in purpose? And I'm a little confused.
Oh, that's okay. Lots is basically like an accession lot. I'd actually like to change the title of that to accession lots.
Okay.
So that's a more formal grouping of objects in a more formal record. So
Okay.
I don't know what I've got for sets for in the sandbox. So my example is always, I walk into your museum as me, I want to give you a whole collection of items from my wedding. So I'm walking in with a lot of items that consists of my wedding photographs, my wedding dress, my invitations, the any ephemera that I have from it, like things like that. So you're going to track that under object lots. And that's going to be like one record, but it'll have things attached to it. Actually, let me go to Fairfield because it'll be a better
I see. So
example.
It's literally the way the donation was made as opposed to a list of objects that I'm making.
Yes.
For whatever purpose I have. Okay.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah. In terminology, we don't use lots here. So it's like an accession group.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I get it now.
Yep. Same thing. It's whatever your terminology is, however you want to use it. That's kind of when I want to add like accession lots to it, because it's kind of not just object lots. It's weird.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, so like here's Morris Canning's group of items, and I've actually created a bunch of old lots from like old investigation of old records. So I've got that group from him. I'm trying to find something with more than one object. See if anybody makes sense. Yeah, so sets is totally like artificial. I'm like, you could create a set as like being from a person.
Right. Okay.
Oh, here's a good one. Oh, unknown. Huh. Oh, from back cataloging. So I created like to be able to trace some things. This is a lot of like register style admin stuff.
Yeah.
I create a whole thing from back cataloging, and all these items are a back cataloging number. So there's related 39 objects for this, and you can click under contents and see all the items. So it's just a way of me going through a workflow for stuff.
Yeah.
So if I find like something, I'm going to add a record for an X 2003 number at the moment, I can go in and just do like a new object from that lot. Oh, wait. Like add a new object from here. And it kind of traces back to this and say, oh, this is this whole weird back cataloging X 2003 thing. You can create an object from there.
Okay, great.
Yep. Okay, Joanne.
Yes, following up on that question, we've been just at this point just identifying the donor of items, and sometimes we have someone who's donated many items over the years, you know, from an old family or something like that. Can we use lot for that if it was donated at different dates?
It depends on how you guys want to do that workflow. Technically, yes, you totally could. The way that Fairfield is set up, we just do it currently by a particular donation. Like if Sue Smith donates something in 2003, we keep track of just that one. And she donated in something in 2005, it would be another lot.
Okay.
That being said, we did with some of our past weird numbering, there's a 1969 run of numbers that does include stuff like that. That does include one person giving us stuff. Oh, my mouse just stopped working. Weird. We have a group of things that were just given by one person over several different years, and we have tracked them that way. And it's not something I've started doing, it's just following up on an old numbering thing that we have. So there's probably, any of these 1969 things. And I've actually gone in and put, if I know different though, so Mary Alice gave us a bunch of stuff over the years. And if I find out that she gave us other items that are included in this numbering, I'll put November 67, I'll add a date for like December 1969, and I'll track the dates there. So, I mean, if you can totally do it that way.
So in this example here, you have her under related entities donated by, and then you have her in the credit line. So what's the purpose of having it twice?
The related entity, especially when you see that little underline there, will send you to her record. So you'll have, that is the record for Mary Alice. So if I click on her, that sends you to her record to see what other things she's related to. So she's also related to 121 other objects.
Okay.
And you'll see the relationships here. If you go down there, these are all her related objects, and it'll actually show you whether it was donated, provided, they would probably be owned by, listed here, and that kind of thing. Other related lots that she's like given us over the years. This is a whole kettle of fish with numbering at Fairfield, which is a train wreck. So anybody with numbering issues, you're not the only one. So it'll show you other things like that. And then the purpose of the related like that versus the credit line is just a free text field. So that's not relating to anybody particularly like that. It's the formal credit line for using in exhibitions or publications or things like that. So like if somebody gives you something today and says, like if I give you my wedding stuff or my mom's wedding stuff, and I want to say like gift of Diane Lee in memory of Billy Ann Carpenter, and I have this whole long thing, that's the formal credit line that the donor has asked to use.
Okay.
Kind of thing. I don't recommend really long credit lines. I try to dissuade people from using them. But some people just, they want to put that, memorial into somebody. And every time they do use a really long one, I apologize to our exhibition staff. We have had some long ones, but generally that's just the formal. So if you're doing an exhibit and we want the label that's going to go up next to her thing, it's going to say Gift of Mary Alice.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. We're just about at 11 o'clock. Anybody else have any last questions? I'm not seeing a lot of people, so awesome. That means everybody knows exactly what they're doing and is an expert and cruising right along in their systems. So I had a list up and now I know what it was. So next office hours will be next month. And we are covering, I wrote it down so I could say it. I think we're covering geography or georeference. So, which is really super interesting. And I'll show you a bunch of applications for that. So join us next month, and if you have any questions. So thanks, everybody. I'm going to stop recording.